Oh, Stalin was a mighty man, and a mighty man was he. He led the Soviet people on the road to victory. All through the revolution, he fought at Lenin's side, and they made a combination till the day that Lenin died. He said, come on, you people, we must work with brain and hand. And then one day the Nazis came into the Soviet land. They plundered to the Volga, to Stalingrad. And then Joe Stalin said, come on, me boys, and kicked them out again. Oh, Stalin was a southerner, in Georgia he was born, where the oranges grow thick and fast and fields of waving corn. And Stalin is a farmer, his fingers they are green, and he has planted the biggest crop the world has ever seen. One day he looked upon the map and frowned and shook his head. There's too much brown and not enough green, these were the words he said. We'll have to change the weather, boys, he said, and then he smiled. So let's begin by planting trees along 3,000 miles. So Stalin rolled his sleeves up then and said it's time to start. The Volga River and the Don, they are too far apart. I think we'd better join them, so come and help me, pal, and we'll build a mighty waterway, the Volga-Don Canal. Then Stalin went into the north, and there saw rivers three, all emptying their waters into the polar sea. Now that's not right, Joe Stalin said, these rivers, they are ours. We'll turn them round and make them work and make electric power. There was a range of mountains that were standing in the way, so Stalin put his hand out and smoothed them all away, for he is determined to make them all green, and that's the biggest project that the world has ever seen. Oh, Stalin is a mighty man, and he has a mighty plan. He's harnessed nature to the plow to work for the good of man. He's hammered out the future, the fortune he has seen, and he's made the worker state the best the world has ever seen.
전체의 사회 주의를 우리 어떻게 정대로 지키는가를 세계여보라. 조선은 결심하면 한다. 조선은 한다면 한다. 국민 백성의 영도 따라서 선군의 붉은 기 그 신념으로 조선은 결심하면 한다. 조선은 한다면 한다. 조체의 강성대국을 우리 어떻게 이 땅에 세우는가를 세계여보라. 조선은 결심하면 한다. 조선은 한다면 한다. 장군님의 뜻을 받들어 붉은의 정신력 그대 장으로 조선은 결심하면 한다. 조선은 한다면 한다. 조선 결심하면 한다. 조선 한다면 한다. Ягод негн артим терек
Eltin darragette bozzima Adon gidi honcisem Agacimin honcisem Nește bunii zoste hung Nerinci atar huioșu
Le Vietnam brûle et moi je hurle Mao Mao. Johnson rigole et moi je vole Mao Mao. Le napalm coule et moi je roule Mao Mao. Les villes crèvent et moi je rêve Mao Mao. Les putains crient et moi je ris Mao Mao. Le riz est fou et moi je joue Mao Mao.
C'est le petit
l'impérialisme dicte partout sa loi. La révolution n'est pas un dîner. La bomba est un tigre en papier. Les masses sont les véritables héros. Les ricains tuent et moi je mue Mao Mao. Les fous sont rois et moi je bois Mao Mao. Les bombes tonnent et moi je sonne Mao Mao. Les bébés fuient et moi je fuis Mao Mao. Les Russes mangent et moi je danse Mao Mao. Diable dénonce, je renonce Mao Mao.
C'est le petit livre rouge qui fait que tout enfin bouge.
La base de l'armée, c'est le soldat. Le vrai pouvoir est au bout du fusil. Les monstres seront tous anéantis. L'ennemi ne périt pas de lui-même. Mao Mao. Mao Mao. Mao Mao. Mao Mao.
When I was young, I used to be as fine a man as ever you'd see in the Prince of Wales. He said to me, come and join the British Army. Tooraloo, they're looking for monkeys up in the zoo. It says, one, if I had a face like you, I'd join the British Army. Sarah Connan baked a cake, and so for poor old Slattery sake, sure I threw myself into the lake, pretending I was barmy. Tooraloo, I've made me mind up what to do. Now I'll work me ticket home to you and the British Army. Sergeant Healy went away and his wife got in the family way, and the only words that she could say was blame the British Army. Tooraloo, me curse upon the Labour Blue that took me darling boy from me to join the British Army. Corporal Sheen is a terrible note, just give him a couple of jars of stout and he beat the enemy with his mouth and save the British Army. Tooraloo, I've made me mind up what to do. Now I'll work me ticket home to you and the British Army.
Ich trage eine Fahne und diese Fahne ist rot. Es ist die Arbeiterfahne, die Vater trug durch die Not. Die Fahne ist niemals gefallen, so oft auch ihr Träger fiel. Sie weht heute über uns allen und zieht schon der Sehnsucht Ziel. Ich trage eine Fahne, das Rot der Arbeiter macht. Es hat die Arbeiterfahne bei Nacht mein Vater bewacht und hat sie mir früh übergeben, als Morgenrot stieg empor, dass wir sie zur Sonne heben, bei Tag in der Kampf beschworen. Ich trage eine Fahne und diese Fahne ist rot. Es ist die Arbeiterfahne, die uns die Einheit gebot. Sie hat unsere Väter begleitet durch Ader und Nacht und Krieg. Drum vorwärts die Söhne erstreiten, zu
разовьем мы березу, разовьем мы кудряву. Ой, да-дай-да, ой, да-дай-да, разовьем мы кудряву.
Утреннего в жизни важен первый шаг. Слышишь, веют над страною ветры яростных атак. И вновь продолжает собой, и сердцу тревожно в груди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный октябрь впереди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный октябрь впереди. Весть летит во все концы, вы поверьте нам, отцы, будут новые победы, станут новые бойцы. жди, жизнь для правды не щади. Нам, ребята, в этой жизни только с правдой по пути.
Продолжает собой, и сердце тревожно грузит. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный отцом впереди. И Ленин такой молодой, и юный отцом впереди. Не стой, снегопад, не реке верный богат.
वतन 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 दादलू अफगान वतन दा पमूंगा गान वतन दा पमूंगा गान वतन दा पमूंगा गान वतन और दखैरत दजलली लरी तूफान लरी रूम की बाजान लरी रूम की बाजान लरी रूम की बाजान लरी और दखैरत दजलली लरी.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Let me just have a look at the sound levels here. I think we're doing all right. Yes, we are. So, good evening, everybody. It is the evening of the 4th of February 2025, and this is the beginning of what will probably be a new approach to programming this year on this particular channel. And I'll just say something brief about that before venturing into the topic at hand, because as you can see from the title, we are, of course, tonight looking at a whole new series, and the way in which that this will fit into our regular programming will be as follows. See, in future, Tuesdays will be the day for this series, which is Marxism and Human Relationships, and we will get to what that is in just a moment. As you know already, Wednesdays are the day on which I typically record and then put out the Decline and Fall program with our comrade and friend Kit Clarenberg, our man in the once and future Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia, and of course so that's Wednesday, and then Thursday from now on will be, of course, our ongoing show on debunking common anti-communist myths. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are going to be set up in that way in the coming weeks ahead. So that will then leave us Mondays and Fridays to fill, and at least one of those will be going back to the traditional programming that we've been doing for quite some time now, on and off. But we're making this regular again. It'll be the return of the Stalin series. So Stalin's work on the opposition, that will be returning at the end of this week on the Friday, I believe. Well, that will be when we schedule it for, which will then leave, of course, Monday as our sort of free-floating show. Now, the purpose of all this is to regularize programming, meaning that I have decided to give this a professional edge that it perhaps didn't have before. So we're going to be scheduling the live streams in advance, more in advance, so that more of you will have a chance to actually watch this live and in person. And the purpose is also to make sure that we get as many eyes on this as possible. So that's the way we're going to be doing it in the near future. How is the sound? I ask because this is a routine problem on this. If there's any issues, let me know. Looks like we're okay on the levels though. Okay, so turning then to this series and Marxism and human relationships, what does this actually mean? What does it refer to? Now, before anybody starts to make suggestions, the purpose of this series, of course, is not to be an advice column, though we may start one of those in the near future, who knows. Nor is it a dating service, nor is it any kind of Marxist dating service. So if you're here for that, please go elsewhere. I believe Hassan Piker is now running that kind of operation. I'm sure that he will be delighted to fix you up for a small fee. So the purpose then of this is to start what is provisionally, at least, scheduled to be a 10-episode long series on a Marxist analysis of human relationships. Now, what do we mean by human relationships? So it's when I say, of course, it's not an advice column. We mean, of course, the fundamental relationships which human beings depend upon to survive and to reproduce themselves, meaning community and family. And this will take us in an exploration next week in our first proper episode beyond this introduction into Engels's work on the origin of the family, private property and the state. And we will be examining that. We'll also be examining various works from Marx in that episode. And the basis for this episode, the one that will be broadcast next Tuesday, will be that what we will be doing is exploring the relevance of Engels and his analysis in the origin of the family. And we will then be looking for the continuities there, which will be, of course, the way in which the analysis that Engels presented in that work, way it holds up, the way it might potentially be need to be addressed somewhat, and the or changes in circumstances might need to be addressed, but also it will be setting out the theoretical basis for our later exploration of the way in which imperialism has decayed and corroded human relationships. So next week will be our theoretical foundation to a degree. There will be various elements, of course, added to this over time. Now, so from the foundation, we will then move to looking at various different examples as to how human relationships change over time, particularly in the capitalist period and in the socialist states of the 20th century. So we'll be looking at the example of the USSR, the example of China, the example of the people's democracies of the east of Europe, and how did human community, family relationships change within the socialist framework, within the framework of as a planned economy and workers' states. And for that we will of course be looking at the examples given to us the theoretical and practical work done by people like, of course, Lenin, Stalin, Alexandra Kollontai, Clara Zetkin, and various others from that early revolutionary period. We'll also be visiting the work of Kristen Godsey and her book, which of course is entitled "Do Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism?" So we'll be looking at that, and then we will also then be taking a turn into the realm of the, shall we say, the French theorists. So we will be considering Foucault's work on sexuality, which I've been going through over the past couple of days, and we'll be doing a program on. We will be looking at his work, his conclusions, and also we will then be moving into, shall we say, the modern era by examining why in certain periods of time, particularly this one, certain people have decided to choose simulations of relationships, simulations of sex, over the real version of it. Now, of course, this is informed by Jean Baudrillard and his work Simulacra and Simulation, and we will be talking about that in quite some detail. The conclusion will be to our 10-episode series will be to examine how badly damaged human relations have been under this period of what I'm going to refer to as late-stage imperialism. And here we will pause to just deal with a potential criticism of this particular series, which is that this will necessarily be a consideration mainly, but not exclusively, but mainly of human relationships under late-stage imperialism, and also mostly from the perspective of course, a man who has grown up under late-stage imperialism. That is me, in case you hadn't guessed. And this is, of course, unavoidable. There's a lot of this is going to be reflective of, reflections upon and an analysis of the culture in which we live, which I grew up in. And so much of what we are going to have to be talking about here considers a cultural analysis, but not a purely cultural analysis of developments, particularly in Britain, the United States, France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, etc., the imperialist countries, developments in the culture of those countries and how that's informed human relationships, certainly since World War II. Because even though there are, of course, differences between each of those countries, there are enough similarities in both the economic base and therefore the cultural superstructure, shall we say, and the way in which mass culture is produced in these countries, or produced for these countries. There are enough similarities there to merit taking it as a common approach, or taking a common approach to all of them. So what we're going to be dealing with then is imperialism as a system, and with the cultural elements of that being considered as to how the cultural element bleeds over into an effect upon human relationship. And here I would argue the work of someone like, not a favourite of mine, but a necessary read for this particular series, Guy Debord's The Society of Spectacle, and then later on Baudrillard, who I much prefer, and his work on Simulacra and Simulation. And then to understand those, and to understand why through the development of mass culture and mass consumption media, you get to a place where, again, like simulations are preferred by many people to actual real human relationships. You have to consider the developments in the culture industry since 1945. So by necessity, we will need to consider people whose work I've previously derided and despised. So that is, of course, our old friend Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, etc. will need to be thrown into the mix, as will, of course, our old friend and frequent a frequent butt of rather a lot of jokes, of course, a certain Mr. Zizek will be making an appearance too. Not in person, but I will be doing the impression. Now, to go back to first principles here, now we will get to Engels and Marx and the outline of their approach to considering human relations over time and through different modes of production. And we'll get to that next week. But to say something about the late stage imperialism and what that means in terms of its impact upon our culture and human relations. Now, late stage imperialism is defined in part by the fact that it has now got to the stage, particularly in Britain, but increasingly in the rest of Western Europe as well, where you have ever-increasing amounts of export of capital, ever-increasing deindustrialization, the hollowing out of the economy and even the capitalist state itself by the ruling class, and the move to a system which is based on pure parasitism. Now, here this is pretty much incontestable. I mean, even bourgeois analysts are now agreeing to a certain extent with the Marxist-Leninist approach here, in that they have recognized that they are in a severe hole brought about by deindustrialization, that they're in an even bigger hole brought about by the atomization of society, and that this is now a significant problem facing them. They, of course, have no real idea of how to deal with it. So what does this mean in terms of the culture? And here, of course, the work of someone like Baudrillard is particularly useful in considering, well, what does that do to the kind of culture that is represented, and what does the culture do to poison human relations? So there's several levels that I would argue that late stage imperialism poisons human relations on. First of all, let's look just briefly here at the economic side of it, because this is this is part of the this is the root, at least the basis upon which everything else springs forth from. Now, late stage imperialism is delivering a working class that is increasingly broke, that is increasingly subjected to an extreme degree of alienation. We'll come to more upon that when we look at Marx's definition of an analysis of alienation next week, but which you have an extreme amount of atomization due to the destruction of community and the living conditions of many people, compelling them to either live solo or live in transitory or temporary accommodation. Meaning that the various different elements, such as strong community relations, the working class, even at a time of a more materially deprived past, could have lent on for some kind of support. Much of that is now gone. And so as a consequence of which, you have many generations, 2, possibly 3 generations, now growing up at a time of extreme alienation and extreme atomization. And at the same time, what you have is a ruling class which is, first of all, has deliberately created this situation. They wanted a situation where class solidarity was broken down, where community solidity was broken down, where atomization ruled, and the only real relationship that was possible for somebody to have was the relationship they have with the market, the relationship they have with the cash nexus, the relationship they have with their employer, the relationship that they have with the kind of consumer goods they choose to buy. That's the kind of relationship that the late stage imperialist ruling class wants the domestic working class to have. They don't want you to have any kind of relations which would cause you to elevate community or class or family above market relations. Market relations are the absolute be-all and end-all and must be worshipped above everything else. And that is, of course, something that the ruling class has deliberately done. Now, this presents them, though, with a problem, because on the one level, the ruling class wants an atomized, alienated, completely asocial society filled with people who can barely interact with each other. What the ruling class wants is a society which is where the workers are just about able to interact with each other enough to do the job they're exploited for, but of course not enough to actually mount any kind of solidarity with each other in resistance to the exploitation of the employers. And so then what we are dealing with here is a situation where, having created large amounts of alienation and atomization, having broken the bonds of community solidarity and class solidarity, the ruling class is then left with a problem, because you still need, as a ruling class, these people to be the working class to be bound together, to periodically be rallied behind the flag, rallied to the supposed defense of the nation. And now they're faced with a problem, which is that nobody in the working class, or very few in the working class, actually believes that the ruling class wants to or is capable of defending any collective endeavor, be it nation, community, or never mind class. And because there's so much individualization and atomization that's been encouraged over time, even reactionaries are now starting to wonder. Are now starting to wonder exactly what is the cost of this. What exactly is the cost of the atomization of the working class, when the ruling class wants to do things like potentially mobilize for a war against the Russians, which of course they can't do, and they wouldn't possibly stand any chance of winning. They look at the opinion polls, they look at the potential opinions in the working class around mass mobilization for the purposes of war, and they come away with the opinion that, well, not only is the working class not prepared to do it, but even large elements of the middle class aren't either. And it's simply because that they have destroyed any concept of the working class owing the government anything at all. And this is indeed part of the byproduct of the many decades of deliberately creating large amounts of atomization. So the ruling class is left with a bit of a problem, which is that on the one hand they want the alienated, atomized working class as it stands. On the other hand, they need to foster some sense of collective identity to, if they need to, rally people in the in defence of the class interests of the ruling class, and to disguise it as the interests of the nation, or national interest, or defence of the fatherland and flag, or defence of the monarchy or the church, none of which, by the way, would work these days, because nobody wants to defend either of those things. So they're left with a bit of a problem, which is part of the reason why you see all these different, various different bourgeois experiments at fostering some kind of national narrative at the moment. So you see desperate attempts to sort of recreate a sense of community, but only on the terms that are acceptable to the bourgeoisie. So you have these different attempts at fostering various different forms of national chauvinism, or sort of sectarian bigotry, or some kind of national narrative behind which they hope to rally at least a certain section of the working class. This is what, by the way, the foul denizens of the former Trotskyite rag known as Spiked magazine has been up to. The reason why they're refloating loads of age-old anti-Muslim propaganda and banging the drum on immigration and other things like that is a desperate attempt to try and find a unifying narrative for their friends not in government, but potentially in government quite soon. It's why you see various different extremely online reactionaries trailing ideas about how to revive right-wing social democracy, or conservative social democracy. It's why you see all these reform ideas spinning around the Trump administration in the United States. They are all looking for some kind of way to re-rally the working class to the defense of the nation and the idea of the nation as a community of shared interests. They haven't succeeded thus far in this country. I don't think Trump's going to succeed with it either. So this is why there's so many of these attempts to try and find a new national narrative at the moment, be it purely negative, focused around persecution of national minorities, persecution of linguistic or religious minorities, anti-immigration stuff, anti-crime and disorder stuff, which of course taps into a certain social requirement of the working class, and that nobody wants to live in a crime-riddled neighborhood. But again, it's not something that you can rally people up in the same way that you could have perhaps 40 or 50 years ago. Because 40 or 50 years ago, the working class or the labor aristocracy, who were as interested in law and order as a mobilizing issue, was also defending some real material gains from the post-war reform period. A lot of that's gone now. So the ruling class has real problems, hence its attempts, as I said, to try and find some kind of unifying narrative to rally the troops behind, quite literally. I don't think that they will succeed because, of course, things are too far gone for that. But what about the other side of things? So that's shall we say, the grand narratives of the ruling class right there. Their need to, on the one hand, keep the working class as non-conscious as possible, to keep the working class as atomized as possible, to stop the development of class consciousness. On the other hand, they of course need some kind of rallying narrative. So herein you have a tension. Now, what about the other side of things, which is the family relationships, individual relationships? How is, and this is what we will go on to explore, how is late-stage imperialism poisoning those? Well, to repeat a line I've said on various different platforms before, as Marx said many, many decades ago, in the middle of the 19th century, when talking about the effect of capitalism in the Communist Manifesto, all that is sacred is profaned. So every sacred element of human relations is profaned via its exposure to the laws of the market. And the laws of the market, when it comes to human relationships, meaning both emotional and the sexual side of them, is of course something which the culture industry has been very much interested in. It was fairly early on that the advertising executives, via their adoption of a certain perhaps perverted form of psychoanalytical methods, that the ad men of the United States in particular, but also the British, but the US was really in the lead on this one, discovered how to manipulate, shall we say, sexual imagery in order to sell products. And this is one of the big and dangerous developments of the 20th century. And as soon as they, of course, discovered that, this was the genie out of the bottle moment, or shall we say, the wine out of the bottle. It can't be put back in. And the way in which that this has impacted upon human relations will also be explored across the course of this series. And what we will go on to argue is that it's not simply just the case that the advertisers discovered how to flirt with sexual imagery in order to sell products. What happened was that you also see the birth of and the development of and the infiltration and, shall we say, the leakage of this into so-called mainstream culture of course, the porn industry, and how this came to be in the West, certainly, one of the defining horrors, shall we say, of our time period. How the pornographization of everything managed to cheapen and managed to reduce to the most dull, repetitive and mechanistic manner the most, what should be the most sacred elements of, shall we say, the union between humans, and reduce it down to a tawdry and cheap, sad, pale reflection of something which should be beautiful, that is, of course, destroyed by the not just the advertising industry, but then, of course, the porn industry, and then that reflects back into the wider culture. And here we get into the concept of why, or the ideas about why there are so many, and it is unfortunately the case that most of these characters are men. Why do so many men prefer simulations to reality? Simulations of relationships, simulations of emotions, simulations of sex, rather than the real thing. And it is my contention, and I will go on to make this argument, that this is the cumulative effect of the advertising industry, of the porn industry, and the coming together of those things in the so-called mainstream entertainment industry. You see, what's been sold to all of us in the West, and what's been bought by many, is, of course, the idea of human relationships, which is mediated entirely through those three mediums: through advertising, through the influence of pornography, and then through the influence of both over so-called mainstream culture. And by diving into this, we can see why such a mess has been made of human relations in the early 21st century, because of these influences, plus the ruling class's various different, very crude attempts to undo some of the negative impacts of their own propaganda. So it is a wide spectrum of analysis that we will be engaging here, which is why it is a 10-episode series. And so what we will start with next week, as I said, is a consideration of Engels in Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State. And we will also consider some work by Marx along similar lines as well. And then we will then proceed onward from there to look at other philosophers of the 19th century, and why it is the case that some of those on the irrationalist side of things are important to consider as well. And so those are the next 2 weeks we've got lined up there. As I said, it's at least a 10-episode series, which will also include an examination of human relations inside socialist states, a consideration of the work of Foucault and Baudrillard, and a consideration of the devastating impact of the unholy trifecta of advertising, porn, and the mass culture industry on the human psyche and on human relationships as a result of that. So, quite some journey we've got ahead of us on Tuesday evenings. I hope you can join me for much of this. So, we will now pause to examine the various different comments that have come in thus far. So let's go up to the top and start off with Pavel Linovsky. Hello to you, Pavel, who says, greetings from Austria. I am currently reading Capital Volume 1 in German. I am on page 200. At best, I manage 15 to 30 pages in the evening after work. It is very dense. Well, Pavel, that's better than I managed on the first time I tried to read Capital Volume 1. So you're doing much better. Good to see comrades picking that up. It is worth persisting with. As I said, I've read it 3 times. The first 2 times, I don't think I understood. Well, first time I didn't understand a damn thing about it and really struggled to get through it. The second time I understood a few chapters, again struggled to get through it. The third time I read it in a number of weeks and I actually started to understand it. And I like to say, when it comes to Capital Volume 1, and all of the volumes of Capital, but that's the one I've read the most, it's something which you never stop in terms of finding more things to appreciate about it, or never stop developing your understanding of it. So I was 40 by the time I could properly start to understand Volume 1. And that was on the 3rd read-through. Hello to James Graham. Hello to Pablo Popova, who says, I'm learning Warsawianka on piano. I've never played, so it's a bit dense. Well, good luck with that, comrade. Hello to Peter, joining us on Perfidious Albion Time. Hello to Juan and Pavel, who says, thanks to your work and Midwestern Marx, I managed to avoid joining a Trotskyite grouping in Austria. I appreciate help, thanks. Well, glad that you could avoid that miserable fate. Wish somebody had managed to tell me all those years ago, but there you go. Hello to Cosmic Wakes, who says, good evening, comrades. I'm greetings from South Africa. I'm reading Karl Kautsky's Class Struggle Erfurt program. Interesting. Not read that one myself. Let us know how it goes. Hello to Dinner with Franklin and Alexander Lukter and Gabriel and Mushkin, Ogas Cybernetics from Idaho. Hello to Robson out there in Indonesia. Hello to Abtin. Hello to Edward. Hello to Sid Hatfield. Hello to Davey out there in Gwynedd. Hello to FP from El Salvador. Hello to Nush82, who joins us from Melbourne, from the US vassal state of Australia. Hello to Enigma, and hello to Alda Larkin, joining us from Ireland. Hello to Krasny Vostok. Hello to Anthony McKeown, joining us from Prague. Hello to Eduardo, for joining us from Brixton, London. Hello to Tom Wolfe. Hello to Edward, who says, my mother, who hates the old Latvian SSR, always likes to cite Orwell, that all pigs are equal, but some are more equal, when demonizing and cursing the old Soviet state. Well, I mean, we probably need to do a show on the wretchedness of George Orwell, but first of all, Orwell plagiarized a lot of that book, Animal Farm, from, I believe it was a Russian author. But also, like, when he was writing specifically about a time when what Orwell describes as the nightmarish horror of the Soviet-style farm, of course, refers far more to the later revisionist period, and Orwell was basically just adopting Trotsky's critique and writing it into bad fiction. So yes, a show on the wretchedness of Orwell probably needed. Hello to Brendan Hoffman, who says, who love the title. I'm gravitating towards comrades who are kind to other comrades even when they make mistakes. Relationships is big. Well, Brendan, I think the thing I have discovered is that if you make a lot of mistakes, it gives you a wonderful opportunity to learn. And so therefore one has to be, I wouldn't say overly indulgent of people's mistakes, but understanding of mistakes. If I was to judge myself too harshly, I would probably have to retire from doing this, because my knowledge about various different things upon which I speak about comes from the fact that I've been part of movements which have disastrously failed, and I've made a lot of political mistakes in my time. Hello to Heidi, who joins us from Edinburgh. Hello to Mutanda, Alexander Lukter. Excuse me. Hello to Sun Chu out in Algeria, who's currently reading Socialism with Chinese Characteristics by Harpal Bra. Glad to have introduced you to that, comrade. Hello to Comrade Ian Foster. Hello to Withnail World and Almir from Slovenia, once and future Yugoslavia. Hello to Rista Kostadinov. Hello to Jonathan Collins. And who else we got here? Hello to Jace Hart, Keel Jones. Plato's Beard from the People's Republic of Brent in London. AK, Necessary Agent, Nikki Const. Yes, Robson, we will be getting to the certain predilections of a certain Michel Foucault later on, and what that might mean in terms of his work. So yes, that issue will be addressed. We got a Luigi fan in the chat. Well, not exactly a surprise, but my opinions on him can be found in previous episodes. Sid Hatfield says, television took the implementation of bourgeois propaganda to a whole new level, especially on the cultural level. Goebbels would have cut off his saluting arm for access to Western TV. Yes, indeed he would. Okay, hello to Agricola Urbanus. Hello to also Alex Oliveira. We've got also here Alexander Lukter says, Alfred Kinsey's questionable motivation in the first place, taking probably neurotic 50s Americans as the standard for what is human, is the rot at the core of a lot of the unhealthy stuff at the moment. Interesting point. We'll be coming back to that. Hello to Mo1917. Hello to Even Sten. Hello to also, let's have a look through here, Carter Mann, who comes to us from snowy Seattle. Hello to Almir, who says, I was watching videos from China, big groups of people working out, doing yoga in big, green and clean parks. I got a real feeling of a spirit of community, something I don't feel here. Yeah, I mean, you find that in places in the West, like from time to time, but in China there's a big effort to do that. You also see, of course, lots of examples of that from the DPRK. And again, it comes down to the fact that the capitalist class is very conflicted about any kind of community, because on the one hand, they, as I said, they require a certain sense of community to rally behind the flag at times where they want such a thing to be done. But at another level, they always fear anything which is any sense of community which is beyond their control, and certainly something which is beyond market relations as well. Which is why, of course, that's part of the reason why they cannibalize and marketize absolutely everything, which is, of course, what's been done to modern sport. So, moving through the comments here. Agricola Urbana says, the Matrix series came out of that simulacron simulation thesis. A lot of Marxism in Matrix, for example, works on surplus alienation, etc. There was a good Marxist analysis from a German author. Okay, I'll make a note of that. I think the Matrix, to be blunt, I mean, I think the Wachowski brothers basically read the blurb of simulacra and simulation and didn't understand most of that. It basically just two stoned guys in the late 90s saying, "Hey man, wouldn't it be funny if everything was a simulation?" And then they went on to live simulated lives themselves. So there you go. Keel Jones says, Madison Avenue and the CIA were hand in glove from day one. That's true. Hello to Ash in Melbourne. Good to have you with us. Free Palestine, Alexa Flood says, most men have a hard time understanding what you just said, Alexander, because of porn. Well, certainly as somebody pointed out to me recently, yeah, a lot of people, well, let's be fair, a lot of men get very defensive over pornography, and it is that which caused me to go away and read Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation, because it's a horrendous modern development that a lot of guys have gone so far in just getting fucking addled by this shit, to the point where like a normal human relationship is a struggle for them. So that's certainly something that we will be addressing. Okay. Judith says, you might discuss the high standards of human beauty brought to us by the entertainment industry and its effect on the expectation of beauty in future romantic partners. Yes, that's a good point from Judith there. The way in which I think this is probably something I will need to address as we go through the series. Certainly, it's the case that again, I was having this conversation with somebody recently where it was pointed out to me that like so many of the people on like television now basically don't look human. And it's weird because like I don't actually watch television very much anymore, if at all. And so what you find yourself doing is, particularly like you go to somewhere like you go to a gym, for instance, and you go to there and you see that there is, you know, there's TV on there. They always have some kind of like awful daytime TV show on. You look at it and you think, holy shit, these people don't even look real, you know. It is a change. That is a change in the course of my lifetime. So, for instance, like when daytime TV began in Britain, like the people on it at least looked like human beings. Now it just looks like fucking CGI monsters. And that's like the daytime shit. That's not even like the top of the line big budget stuff. So yes, Judah's point is well taken. Let's just have a look here. Where are we going? Jonathan Collins says, on the point about TV influencing culture, well, the same is true of the internet mobile phones. Kids are glued to the phones and iPads, etc., watching utter shite, perfect for subtle propaganda. Yeah, which is why the Pentagon and the CIA, and in our country, the government in general, invest a lot of time and energy on influencing influencers, shall we say. Alexander Lukter says, How TV Ruined Your Life by Charlie Brooker was a nice British TV series a while back. Yes, Charlie Brooker, when he was funny, before he just disappeared up his own rectum, talking about writing like substandard Twilight Zone episodes, which is what that Black Mirror series became. David King says, hear lots of Americans crying on Red Note when they see food, house and healthcare prices in China. Well, if the Americans who were all crying on Red Note stopped crying, organise and actually started taking action inside the United States, then they could get over some of those problems, or start to have a chance of getting over some of those problems. Weeping and wailing and staring at China with envious eyes isn't going to do you a lot of good in the end. Get it? It goes as much for Britain as it does for America, by the way. Lucas Mashin says, as an enjoyer of Philip K. Dick and old new wave fiction, I must say The Matrix is kind of derivative, but with a computer simulated reality instead of a drug induced one. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Philip K. Dick is, of course, a very interesting author from the post-war period, and we'll be touching on his work at some point as well. Agricola Urbanus says, yes, there is similarity between Nietzsche's style of philosophizing and Nazis like Mein Kampf or Rosenberg's mythos of the 20th century. Very eclectic, simplistic and incohesive, much resentment. Yeah. Stig Pedersen says, notice how advertising now aggressively targets our two last most inner bastions, dreams and magic. It's all over. Dream refrigerator, magic holidays. Don't allow them to penetrate your dreams. Hey, your dreams have been purchased a long time ago and are now being sold back to you. Okay, so 195 of you watching on YouTube right now. Be sure to like and share the stream if you haven't done so already. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Almir says, I don't watch TV either, but I saw a little bit of a certain Turkish show a few days ago. Everyone was so beautiful, not a single average-looking person. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, and this is perhaps a reflection of, like, a certain evolution in things. Like, you do need to reach the point to say, to ask the question about, well, what is beauty exactly? Because this is something that capitalist culture does an awful lot. It's like, well, what exactly is beauty? Because there's the old cliche, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but then again, who gave the beholder his eyes to see, or her eyes to see? Through what filter do we, or a literal filter in terms of an Instagram filter, but through what filters do we interpret what beauty actually means? Because of course it has meant, even if one just regards like the history of Western art, the idea of beauty of the female and the male variety has varied, of course, massively over time. Now it means a very specific thing in terms of certainly women, men too, to a degree. But I think, of course, we must recognise the fact that the beauty standards are more ruthlessly applied to the female part of the population than the male. The beauty standards for men do exist, but of course they're not as I said, they're not as rigorously and almost religiously enforced. So yes, certainly something to pay further consideration to. But I think perhaps one of the things we will need to get into is the idea of like, well, why do they define beauty in a certain way? What's the utility for capital of having these very narrow definitions of what beauty is and what it isn't? Mo 1917 says, here in the States I would say unlearning is seriously necessary alongside class-conscious education. Most people's heads are filled with bourgeois propaganda nonsense. That's true, Mo is correct. Ash says, the porn industry goes out of its way to propagandize men that women love being degraded. But that shows that men are not natural misogynists. The industry has to shape their mentality for profit. Yeah, I would say Ash is right on that, and also that I guess the point I'm making about like how the porn industry bleeds over into everything else. It's like with porn, of course, it's just brutal and direct what they're putting out there, but that then comes into so-called mainstream entertainment in more subtle ways. And that's where the more effective propaganda takes place. So the ubiquitous nature of porn these days, in terms of it being on people's phones, in terms of it being so readily available, makes that direct, brutish element of the propaganda system more available to particularly like younger people than ever before. Though, of course, the old degenerated bastards are out there lapping this shit up as well. Ogas Cybernetics says, Korea is the canary in the coal mine for unrealistic beauty standards in the West, like Japan is for birth rates. Yeah, I mean, that's like the state of play of like occupied Korea in terms of what's been done there is something that we will be looking at, because like you have like hyper unrealistic beauty standards and combined with complete immiseration of the population and collapse of the birth rate. Martin says, I was in a Trotskyite group in Austria but managed to escape. Well, good on you, Martin. Welcome along. Join the rest of us who have. Agricola Urbana says, yeah, the Wachowski brothers rocketed into a parallel reality at some point. Hey, well, all I'll say on that one is cocaine is a hell of a drug. Alexander Lukta says, Instagram filter faces cause the uncanny valley creepy feeling in me. Yeah, it just far too unreal. Far too unreal. Nehat Mere says, capitalist marketing uses dopamine to sell things at the moment. The more the ad controls dopamine release, the more successful it is. However, this approach makes people mentally sick. Good point. Alan Smith says, whenever I post a commie video, I notice the right-wing commentators often go after my looks instead of substance. They seem to care more about male beauty standards more and more for some reason. Well, a lot of these right-wing guys are very repressed gay blokes. I'm not making a joke about that either. Like, a lot of them are. Like, the obsession with like male beauty standards kind of gives that away. And also, like, there's this sort of bizarre fixation on what they imagined like ancient Romans looked like. Well, an ancient Roman peasant looked like a knackered bloke in a smock. So I think they're more obsessed with some of these right wing guys are just as like unrealistic when it comes to what men should look like as they are with women, even more so. And that's before we even get into the horrible world of a certain Mr. Andrew Tate, because you know what's gay, bro? Having sex with women. You know what's not gay? Doing the same thing with a man. That's the Andrew Tate School of Thought. Brought to you by George Galloway these days. Good to see that he's using his platform for good. Nothing like having a seedy pimp and sex offender to big up his fake political party on your show. Good job there, oh great leader of British reformism. But we go on. Jonathan Collins says, well, there's loads of money to be made out of injecting Botox into lips and arses. That's partly how beauty is being defined, influenced by the Kardashians, etc., of course. I was walking past just a regular residential house the other day, and it had a needle, a syringe, as its as a sort of logo outside, and it says "Beauty Clinic" within. And it was like just a regular suburban house. I mean, what do? Rock up, knock on the door, get a lip injection, and go home? It's fucking ridiculous. Agricola Urbana says, I think the beauty surgery industry is sick in America. Compared to Germany, it is 1,000% more like the transgender surgery industry. It is big business and dehumanizing in many ways. Good point. Edward says the question about declining birth rates needs to be talked about on the show. Even North Korea and China are falling. Only the USSR had 2.3%. Excuse me, in 1990. Probably needs a separate approach on that one. Yeah, but you're right. There we go. The AI models on Instagram are deeply unsettling, says Alistair Page McGill, and he is right. Keel Jones says, yes, Tate on Galloway was super weird. Yeah, even weirder than normal. Okay, so we are getting to the end of the show for this evening. So we will be returning to tomorrow with the latest episode of Decline and Fall with our comrade and friend Kit Clarenberg. Please join us for that one. And then Thursday for the program on debunking anti-communist myths. That's the first one of that series on Thursday of this week. And we also have an interview lined up for come out at some point soon. So to all guests to be revealed. So thank you for joining me tonight for this introductory show. Please join me again next week. Be sure to like and share the program if you haven't done so already. And I will be back with you again tomorrow. Until then, here is some music.
Oh, Stalin was a mighty man, he's so beyond to be through Lucia in sun and until the day he died. He said, come on, you people, we must work with brain and hand. And then one day the Nazis came into the Soviet land. They plundered to the Volga, to Stalingrad. And then Joe Stalin said, come on, me boys, and kicked them out again. Oh, Stalin was a southerner, in Georgia he was born, where the oranges grow thick and fast and fields of waving corn. And Stalin is a farmer, his fingers they are green, and he has planted the biggest crop the world has ever seen. One day he looked upon the map and frowned and shook his head. There's too much brown and not enough green, these were the words he said. We'll have to change the weather, boys, he said, and then he smiled. So let's begin by planting trees along 3,000 miles. So Stalin rolled his sleeves up then and said it's time to start. The Volga River and the Don, they are too far apart. I think we'd better join them, so come and help me, pal, and we'll build a mighty waterway, the Volga-Don Canal. Then Stalin went into the north, and there saw rivers three, all emptying their waters into the polar sea. Now that's not right, Joe Stalin said, these rivers, they're ours. We'll turn them round and make them work and make electric power. There was a range of mountains that were standing in the way, so Stalin put his hand out and smoothed them all away. For Joe, he is determined to make the land all green, and that's the biggest project that the world has ever seen. Stalin is a mighty man and he has a mighty plan. He's harnessed nature to the plow to work for the good of man. He's hammered out the future, the fortunate he has seen, and he's made the workers' state the best the world has ever seen.